At exactly 7:13 p.m., I heard the bass line first. It was faint, pulsing through the walls like a second heartbeat. Then the laughter followed, muffled, careless, the kind that only happens when people are too drunk to remember what tomorrow feels like. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just sat there, in the dark, with the TV frozen on the "Are you still watching?" screen, while the sounds of celebration leaked into the night. That party was supposed to be work-related. That party was supposed to be harmless. That party was supposed to be over by 6. But I knew better the moment the Uber app showed the drop-off wasn't a venue. It was a house. A residential one. And not ours. She left wearing lip gloss I hadn't seen in 3 years and a pair of earrings I thought she'd sold during the apartment flood. She didn't look like someone going to a networking event. She looked like a version of herself I hadn't seen since before the ring. At 7:28 p.m., the doorbell rang. It wasn't her. It was a package addressed to her. Same floral script, same sender as last time. But she'd told me she canceled that subscription months ago. I signed for it, walked back in, placed it on the counter. I wasn't planning to open it. But the sticker on the side said, "Return to sender if recipient no longer resides here." And just like that, it felt like the universe was winking at me. I tore it open. Inside was a handwritten note and a set of silk sleepwear. Read. Price tag still attached. No invoice. No branding. Just a scent I didn't recognize and a folded note that read, "You left this in Denver." Thought I'd mail it before she saw it. She. Who was she if not me? And what the hell was in Denver? By 8:12 p.m., I was going through her browser history. By 8:18 p.m., I was downloading recovery software. By 8:34 p.m., I found the deleted photos. They weren't explicit. Not in the way you'd expect. But that's what made them worse. A hand across her lower back. A wine glass balanced on her thigh. A slice of chocolate cake with 2 forks. A hotel lobby I've never walked through. And then, a video. Only 4 seconds long. She's laughing. He's behind the camera. She's wearing the red set. She mouths something at the end. I replayed it a dozen times before I figured it out. I feel bad. He's probably waiting up. I shut the laptop and stared at the window. The party across town was still going. So was my rage. And she had no idea that while she was clinking glasses and letting another man twirl her hair, I was emptying drawers, canceling utilities, changing locks, backing up texts, rewriting the lease. She had no idea that when she came back, she'd find her name erased like chalk after a storm. Because when she walked out that door in those glittery heels and told me not to wait up, she didn't know she wouldn't have a place to come back to. I didn't sleep that night. I just watched the seconds tick by on the oven clock, my eyes tracing the blinking colon over and over again like it was mocking me. At some point around 3:40 a.m., I got up and walked into the bathroom without knowing why. Maybe I thought she'd sent a text. Maybe I thought she was finally home and I just hadn't heard the door. But the house was still dark, still silent, still ours. Technically, the bathroom light hummed as it flickered on. I glanced at the sink out of habit. Her toothbrush was bone dry. It hit me harder than the photos, harder than the silk. Because no matter what excuse she might invent, no matter how many stories she was rehearsing wherever she was, you can't lie about a dry toothbrush. That's the kind of truth that doesn't need a witness. She never came home. And it wasn't just the absence that ruined me. It was how quiet it was. Her absence wasn't loud. It didn't knock over lamps or slam doors. It didn't leave perfume in the air or footprints on the stairs. It just sat there, hollow, like a hole punched into drywall. By morning, I stopped pretending she'd call. I made coffee. 2 mugs. I still don't know why. Force of habit, maybe. One stayed full and cold on the kitchen counter while I sat across from it with shaking hands and half an appetite. I kept checking the time as if it mattered. As if her betrayal was somehow running behind schedule. At 8:10 a.m., I opened her closet. You want to know something no one tells you? When someone's planning to vanish, they don't take everything. They leave just enough to make you doubt yourself. Just enough to make it feel like maybe they'll come back. Like it's your fault for overreacting. But I knew what to look for now. The boots with the scuffed heel, gone. The old Polaroid camera she swore she'd never sell, gone. The phone charger on her side of the bed, gone. But the books were still there. The ugly cardigan she hated but wore anyway, still hanging. It was like she was trying to stage the perfect illusion of presence while quietly erasing herself in pieces. I didn't cry. Not then. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out the cheap yellow notebook she kept buried in her sock drawer. the one I wasn't supposed to know about. She once told me it was her dump journal, the place where she scribbled every boring or angry or meaningless thought she didn't want stuck in her head. I flipped to the last written page. The date was 3 days ago. It read, "If I tell him the truth, he'll forgive me. And I don't want to be forgiven." That's the worst part. That was when the shaking really started. Not my hands, my knees. Around noon, I called her sister. Just to test something. I kept my voice steady. I told her I hadn't seen Darla since last night. Her sister laughed, said something like, "Oh, you know how she is with those vendor mixers. She probably crashed at someone's place." I didn't correct her. I let her talk. Then I asked casually, "Do you know if she's been in Denver recently?" Silence. Just for a beat. Then, no. Not that I know of. Why? I lied. Said I thought I saw a photo online from a wedding there. She said she'd check. She never called back. By evening, I knew what I had to do. I took the backup drive from my safe. I made copies of everything. Texts, photos, financial records. I logged into our joint cloud account and started a new folder named Exit. Not for her. For me. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to break plates or show up at that house with the bassy music and demand answers. I wasn't going to post her photos or text some guy with threats in caps lock. I was going to vanish before she could. Beat her at her own exit. Because when she finally texted me that night, 11:04 p.m., all it said was, "Hey, I'll explain everything soon. I promise." I didn't respond. I just stared at those words and imagined her thumbs hovering over the screen, crafting that sentence while someone else poured her another glass of wine. And while she promised things I no longer believed in, I was already erasing her from the world she used to share with me. The next morning, I did something I never thought I would. I left the house without locking the door. Not because I forgot. I remembered. I just didn't see the point. It felt like the house wasn't really mine anymore. Like locking it was pretending there was something inside still worth protecting. The air outside was sharp and bright in that annoying early autumn way where you still want summer, but the wind keeps reminding you it's gone. I drove without a destination, without music, without even knowing where I was pointing the wheel. My thoughts were loud enough. I passed the same gas station 3 times before I finally pulled in. Not because I needed fuel, but because I remembered something small and stupid that I couldn't stop thinking about. 2 weeks ago, Darla had gone out to grab milk. She came back 40 minutes later with no milk, a bag of sour gummy worms, and a distant look in her eye. She said the line was long. I didn't question it. I just asked if she wanted me to make pasta. I parked near the dumpster behind the station. Got out. Looked around like an idiot who thinks betrayal leaves breadcrumbs. And that's when I saw it. No, I swear I'm not making this up. It was her keychain. A little silver star, chipped at the edge, the one I gave her during our second month of dating, still attached to a broken lanyard. Lying in the gravel near the rear fence. What the hell was it doing there? That night, I went back into her email. She used the same password for everything, which was ironic, considering she once called me lazy for reusing Netflix logins. I started digging. Not for anything obvious. No messages from Mark or Logan, or even anyone with a suspicious emoji next to their name. I searched for receipts, calendar invites, hotel confirmations, the quiet fingerprints of a life lived sideways. And I found it. Not an affair. A double life. She had a second bank account under her maiden name. I followed the e-statements down a rabbit hole of monthly payments to some LLC I'd never heard of, something called Willowmark Studios. I Googled it. No website. No business address. But I found a gallery in Denver that listed it as a sponsor for an exhibit titled Intimacy and Distance. The artist's name? Cashinville. I'd never heard of him, but I had seen that name before. On a greeting card. A birthday card, tucked behind our tax folders in the cabinet. I got up, hands shaking again, and started pulling out papers like a man possessed. Bills. Statements. Random manuals from appliances we no longer owned. And then I found it. Pale blue. Thin paper, almost weightless in my hand. The front had a hand-painted branch with 2 crows. The inside read, "To the woman who sees me without filters, edits, or fear. I don't need to exhibit your love. It's already my favorite masterpiece." Cashin. Darla never mentioned a Cashin. Ever. Not once. She had never shown me that card. And I'm not an idiot. You don't hide innocent cards in folders labeled Receipts 2020. You don't pretend someone doesn't exist unless they're very real. I stayed up late rereading it under a lamp that suddenly felt too harsh. My eyes kept going to that line. Sees me without filters. Was that what I had become to her? A filter? A dulling down of who she really was? I started thinking about the time she said she felt foggy, that she felt like she'd shrunk in our life. I told her it was just seasonal blues. She nodded, smiled, asked if we could repaint the hallway. She didn't need a new color on the walls. She wanted to burn the house down and start over. At 2:17 a.m., I texted her. Not a fight, not a threat, just this. Who is Cashin? The message went through, delivered, but no response. For hours. Then at 4:03 a.m., she replied, don't do this over text. Not who, not what are you talking about? Not even denial. Just a redirect. Just a dodge. That was when I realized something. She wasn't afraid I knew. She was afraid I'd tell someone else. And that's when I opened my laptop again, logged into a blank Google Doc, and started writing everything down. Every receipt, every lie, every date and timestamp. Not to post. Not yet. But because the only way to survive someone rewriting your reality is to document the original before they convince you it never happened. I wasn't planning to go inside. I swear I wasn't. It was just supposed to be a drive-by, that small, rust-colored gallery on a side street in downtown that had popped up in her bank records. I had no idea what I was expecting. A logo I recognized? A car I'd seen parked in our driveway once. I don't know. I just wanted something physical. Something I could look at and say, yes, this is real. I'm not losing my mind. But when I pulled up and saw the lights still on after 9 p.m., I parked across the street and watched. People filtered out slowly. Older couples mostly. The kind who wore scarves indoors and nodded at paint like it owed them something. Then a younger guy exited alone. Beanie, dark coat, tattoos on his neck that looked like they'd been scratched on with a pin. He lit a cigarette and stood beneath the awning. That should have been it. I should have driven off. But I got out. I walked across the street like my legs belonged to someone braver. I didn't say anything at first. Just stood beside him under the awning like I had every right to be there. He looked over. Nodded once. Cold tonight, I said. He replied. You here for the show? I shrugged. Just wandering. He looked at me for a second longer than normal. Then he said, she's not in this one. If that's what you're looking for. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like I'd been pushed. Who? He laughed under his breath, like I was doing a bad job playing dumb. Then he flicked ash into the street and said, Darla, the redhead. She used to hang around here. Always talked about color grading in real life. Whatever that meant. I stared at him. She yours? He asked. Not cruelly. Almost gently. I didn't answer. He pulled another cigarette from the box and offered it to me. I took it even though I don't smoke. My hand was trembling. She liked these, he added, tapping the pack. Said they tasted like airport memories. Whatever that means. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. I got back in the car and sat there for 20 full minutes, staring at the front door of the gallery like it might open and spill the truth into the street. When I got home, she was there. In the kitchen, wearing my hoodie, making tea. She looked up like it was the most normal thing in the world, like she hadn't ignored my calls for 2 days, like she hadn't vanished into someone else's life and left crumbs for me to choke on. Hey, she said softly. I didn't hear you come in. I stood in the doorway like I was still outside, soaked in a truth I hadn't planned on confronting face-to-face yet. You were at the gallery on 5th, I said. Her fingers twitched around the mug. Just a little. Not enough for most people to notice. Charlie, Cashin's show. The one you said you didn't go to. She blinked, slow and rehearsed. I didn't lie. I said I hadn't decided. You hid his birthday card in our tax folders. Now her face froze, like she'd reached the end of a script she hadn't finished writing. What do you want me to say? I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because that sentence, that exact sentence, is what guilty people say when they want you to do the emotional labor of their betrayal. I took a step forward. I want you to say his name without flinching. I want you to explain why you were planning to leave me like a ghost. I want to know why you needed a second bank account and why a stranger outside a gallery knows your cigarette brand better than I do. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just looked tired, like a balloon finally exhaling after holding too much breath for too long. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, she whispered. That sentence hit me like a punch to the ribs. Not because it was cruel, but because it was lazy. It meant she did mean for it to happen. She just didn't mean for me to find out. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I left her standing in the kitchen with the kettle still whistling. I went into the bedroom, pulled out the storage bin from under the bed, and started packing without even knowing where I'd go. I just needed the air to not smell like her shampoo anymore. She didn't follow me. She didn't say anything. She just sat at the table and let the steam from the tea fog up the windows. And I realized then, maybe she wasn't afraid I'd leave. Maybe she was afraid I'd stay. I didn't leave that night after all. Maybe I should have. Maybe it would have made a statement, or made her panic, or at the very least spared me the humiliation of watching her move through our shared space like a ghost who still had keys. But I didn't. I sat on the edge of the bed with my shoes still on and stared at the wall while she brushed her teeth in the bathroom, humming like someone who had just finished a long workday instead of a long deception. She came to bed wearing that same faded t-shirt she always wore on cold nights. It had a small hole near the hem. I used to think it was cute. Now it felt like an act, like a costume she put on when she wanted to remind me of the girl I fell in love with. But I wasn't falling for it this time. Not even a little. She didn't try to talk. She just slid under the covers, turned off her lamp, and lay there, still and silent. And I sat there, unmoving, in the dark, wondering how someone could cheat and still sleep like that, calm, even. As if betrayal were just another part of the routine, like brushing your teeth or turning the pillows over. Around 2:17 a.m., I turned to look at her. Her breathing had slowed into that rhythmic pattern that tells you someone is deeply asleep. She always slept on her left side, one hand curled under her chin, the other resting near her chest. I studied her face for a long time, longer than I'd ever admit out loud. Not with hate, not with love, just with the kind of hollow curiosity you feel when you see something valuable that's been cracked in a way you know can't be fixed. She looked peaceful, not guilty, not tormented, just elsewhere. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't living two lives. She had already left this one. She was just doing it slowly enough to avoid confrontation. I got up, padded barefoot to the kitchen, and opened her laptop. She didn't even bother to shut it down properly. She never did. The screen blinked on, and the last tab was still open, a Pinterest board titled Apartment Mood. I scrolled through images of exposed brick, tall bookshelves, minimalistic lighting, soft leather chairs. Not the kind of place we'd ever afford together. Not with our debt. Not with our reality. But clearly, that wasn't the plan. Her plan didn't include me anymore. I clicked through her saved boards. One was private, password protected. I stared at the prompt for a long moment and typed in the only phrase I could think of, cash in. Access granted. Inside were only 6 pins. All photographs. All shot in black and white. A pair of feet tangled in sheets. A man's hand resting on a woman's hip. A shadow of 2 figures reflected in a rain-streaked window. A cigarette burning on a windowsill. A bathtub filled with dark water. A broken picture frame. I closed the laptop. Not out of anger. Out of something worse, clarity. The next morning, she acted normal again. She even made pancakes. She only did that twice a year. Once on my birthday, once when she felt guilty. I guess I knew which one this was. She placed the plate in front of me like a peace offering and poured syrup in a slow spiral, like she was hypnotizing me. I said thank you. I ate every bite. Then I told her I was going out for a few hours. She didn't ask where. She just nodded and said, "Drive safe." That's when I knew she wasn't afraid of me finding out. She assumed I already had. And she thought I would choose to keep pretending, that I'd fold myself into the shape of forgiveness just to avoid the discomfort of change. She didn't know I'd already emptied the joint savings account. She didn't know I'd spoken to the landlord. She didn't know I'd printed photos of every receipt, every message, every boarding pass she forgot to delete from her cloud drive. She didn't know that I wasn't planning to yell, or beg, or threaten. I was planning to vanish cleanly, before she could rewrite the ending. At 3:42 p.m. that day, I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in 8 years. My older brother, Graham. We'd fought over a dumb family inheritance thing and hadn't said a word since. But I knew he'd answer. And he did. "I need a place to land," I said. "Just for a little while." There was a pause. Then he said, "You bringing her?" "No," I said, a lump rising in my throat. He exhaled through the phone. "Good." That night, I didn't sleep beside her. I slept on the couch with a bag half-packed by the door and a printed envelope of evidence resting under my pillow like a loaded weapon. I I wasn't planning to use it. Not yet. But if she pushed me, if she dared look me in the eyes and lie again, I would detonate every quiet truth she tried to bury in the margins. Because she thought I was soft. She forgot I was watching. The morning she asked me if I still loved her was the same morning I found the second key. I was brushing my teeth, trying to pretend the mint didn't taste like acid, when she leaned against the bathroom doorframe in that way she used to when we were still figuring each other out. Casual, soft, a little flirty. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were tired. She looked like someone who'd been up late, not worrying, but planning. She tilted her head and asked, "Do you still love me?" Foam in my mouth, brush still halfway across a molar. And suddenly I realized, it wasn't a real question. It wasn't even a test. It was a diversion. A well-placed firework she could launch into my face while she snuck off and did what she really came here to do. I knew her too well, and I saw the flicker in her eyes the second she asked it, the kind of flicker that comes when someone is hiding a match behind their back. I didn't answer. I spat, rinsed, wiped my mouth, and walked past her without a word. She didn't follow. And that was the beginning of the end. Later that day, I returned home early from work. She didn't expect me to be back before 5. But the moment I opened the front door, I felt it. The air in the room was disturbed. It was subtle, like someone had turned all the picture frames 2 degrees to the left. I walked straight to the hallway closet. There was a lockbox in there. Mine. Metal. Cheap. Basic combo dial. Inside were documents. Not just financial, but personal. Things I didn't even trust my computer with. My mom's old letters. My childhood passport. Our prenup, which she signed on our wedding day like it was an inconvenience. Also, the deed to the second-hand car I bought before we met, and the lease documents from my first apartment. Things that meant something to me, and almost nothing to anyone else. The lockbox looked untouched. But when I entered the code, 9-1-7-5, and opened it, something was off. The documents were in the wrong order. They'd been handled. Someone had gone through my past like it belonged to them. And then I saw it. Beneath the folders, pressed against the bottom, a key. Not my key. Not the key. A copy of my brother's garage key. I recognized the shape. Graham had mailed it to me 2 weeks ago when I said I might come stay. It had been sitting in my glove box. I never brought it inside. And yet, here it was. Duplicated. Darla had made a copy. I sat down at the kitchen table, holding the key between my fingers, staring at the metal like it could confess something. She didn't know I was home yet. I could hear music playing from the bedroom, not loud, but rhythmic. Her usual playlist when she was organizing or purging energy, which I now realized meant either spying or hiding something. I walked down the hall. The bedroom door was open. She was on her laptop, knees curled under her like a college student, earbuds in, humming faintly. She didn't hear me at first. I stepped inside and waited until she sensed me. She flinched, a little too much, and tugged the earbuds out. "You scared me," she said, snapping the laptop closed. "I was looking for something," I said, holding up the key. "Did you lose this?" Her eyes flicked to it, then to me, then away. "That's yours," she said too fast. "I never made a copy." She hesitated. "Must have been Graham." I raised an eyebrow. "He lives 3 states away. I haven't even seen him yet." "Okay, well," she trailed off. The silence between us was so sharp it could have sliced the curtains in half. I stepped forward. She stepped back. And in that moment, we weren't partners. We weren't even people. We were 2 locked safes facing each other, both refusing to blink. "You went into the closet," I said. "No, I didn't." "You touched the lockbox." "I wouldn't do that." "You already have." Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. "Do you want me to leave?" Not with anger. Not with fear. Just surrender. Cold, measured surrender. I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to. But instead I said, "Not yet." She nodded once. Not surprised. Not hurt. She just nodded like she'd been expecting that answer. That night, I moved the lockbox to my car. I also moved the rest of my backup folders, photos, texts, the USB drive, and the burner phone I'd bought, but hadn't activated yet. Because something was shifting. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It wasn't even about cash-in. It was about control. And she'd made a copy of something sacred. Not the key. Me. She'd made a version of me in her mind that was slow, passive, predictable. A man who wouldn't notice her schemes until she was halfway gone. A man who'd cry quietly into an empty pillow, never daring to question the holes in her stories. A man who'd stay still because leaving would require confrontation. But that wasn't who I was anymore. Now I was watching everything. And I wasn't playing her game. I was rewriting it. It started with the sound of drawers. Not slammed. Not yet. Just opened and closed, one after another, with increasing rhythm. Cabinets. Desk. Kitchen counter. Her makeup drawer in the hallway. The sideboard we never used except for dead batteries and mismatched cords. Every 30 seconds, a new one. Like she was on a hunt, or worse, already knew what she was looking for. I didn't move. I sat in the garage with the lights off, listening through the cracked interior door. She didn't know I was in there. She thought I'd gone to the store. I had, but only to make her think I wasn't watching anymore. That had become my greatest tool, the illusion of absence. Eventually, I heard the tear. A piece of paper, ripped too hard to be an accident. Then came the silence. Not the calm kind. The kind that hums. When I walked back into the house, casually, like nothing mattered, she was standing in the hallway with the letter in her hand. The one I had printed and tucked inside the book of poetry she never read. The one addressed not to her, but to Cashin. A letter I'd written from her perspective. A trap. She held it like it had weight. Her eyes were darting, not wild, but calculating. Reading and rereading and trying to decide if I had gone completely off the rails or if she had just miscalculated the depth of the water she was swimming in. I dropped my grocery bag by the door and looked at her. You were never supposed to see that, I said calmly. She didn't blink. What is it? It's not real, I said. But he might think it is. Her face stiffened. I took a step forward, voice still level. Imagine getting a handwritten note in your mailbox, folded neatly inside a wedding invitation envelope. No return address. No fingerprints. Just a letter that says, I'm done pretending you were only an accident. Signed with your name. Written in a version of your handwriting. Her lips parted just slightly. You're lying. I didn't smile. You're right. I haven't sent it yet. She took a step back like I'd just thrown something at her. What the hell are you doing? I'm reminding you what you're playing with, I said. You built this web like no one else was smart enough to see the threads. You picked Cashin because he's distant, disposable, and poetic enough to justify your guilt. You built a parallel world where I was the boring husband who made sandwiches while you wrote your next act. But you didn't cover your tracks. You just counted on me being too soft to follow them. Her eyes were filling, but not with tears. With rage. Pure, stunned rage. I should have known, she said. You never let anything go. That's not true, I said. I'm letting you go, just not quietly. She stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. I waited, not because I was scared, but because I wanted to see what she'd do next. I needed her next move to be clear, not subtle. I was done playing detective. Now I was building a case. When she came out 10 minutes later, she was dressed to leave. Jeans, black sweater, hair pulled back tight, a look of control. She grabbed her keys, her purse, and paused only once, to glance at the letter still lying on the kitchen counter. You send that, and you'll regret it, she said. I looked her dead in the eye. That wasn't the only copy. She left without slamming the door. That scared me more than if she had. The next day, I visited a lawyer. I didn't bring all the receipts yet, just enough to ask pointed questions. About shared assets. About silent exits. About the timeline for dissolving something when the other party doesn't want to admit it's dying. I didn't file. Not yet. But I signed something. A document that froze our joint accounts. Legally. Quietly. She wouldn't know until her next automatic transfer bounced back. I went home and waited. That evening, she returned. No suitcase. No apologies. She dropped her keys in the bowl like she still lived here, like we were still pretending. She moved around the kitchen like nothing had changed. Until she opened her laptop and saw the notification. Account access denied. She stood up straight. Silent. I was already watching from the hallway. You froze our money, she said. You froze your honesty first. You don't get to punish me. I'm not. I'm giving you space to live the life you already chose. I'm just making sure I'm not financing it. She stared at me, then past me, like I wasn't worth the eye contact anymore. Fine, she said. You win. That was the last thing she said that night. She didn't eat. She didn't speak. She just stayed in the bedroom, curled up with her laptop and secrets. But I knew something she didn't. The burner phone in my desk drawer wasn't for calling Cashin. It was for someone else. Because she thought she'd only betrayed one man. But she forgot about the others. The ones who had been burned before me. The ones who would talk. The morning I left, she was still asleep. Not in our bed. She'd moved to the couch 2 nights earlier without a word, as if it were a protest. I didn't care. She could have the whole damn couch, the soft blanket, the silence she used to twist like a knife. It didn't matter anymore. Because I was already gone. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally, psychologically. I had unplugged every wire she'd ever run through me. She just hadn't noticed yet that I was already a shadow walking around the house. I packed quietly. Only essentials. Clothes, files, the hard drive, and that yellow notebook she used to hide in her sock drawer. Not to expose her, I didn't need it anymore. But to remind myself of the man I became through her neglect, and how I never wanted to be him again. I didn't leave a note. She didn't deserve one. Instead, I left the keys, both of them, mine and the one she copied, right on the kitchen counter, next to her favorite mug. The one I never used because it was chipped. The one she always claimed made her tea taste better. I didn't slam the door. I just shut it softly, like closing a book I didn't want to read again. I drove for hours, no destination in mind. Through the hills, into the countryside, past quiet gas stations and stretches of land that had never heard a lie. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could hear myself think without flinching. I stopped at a lake just past noon. A small place. No tourists. No noise. Just a bench and water that didn't need permission to be still. I sat there, watching the wind ripple across the surface, and I breathed in something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the kind you beg for during arguments. The kind that sneaks in once you stop asking people who hurt you to heal you. A few weeks later, I moved into my brother's spare apartment above his garage. It smelled like sawdust and old tools and paint thinner. But it was clean. It was mine. I got a new phone number. Closed old accounts. Changed passwords. Deleted the shared calendar app we'd used for years. And slowly, like muscle memory returning after a long injury, I started living again. I began cooking without asking what she wanted. I read books with no one interrupting me halfway through to talk about a dream they had. I slept without waiting for footsteps in the hallway. And eventually, I laughed. Not at her. Not at the past. Just at something small. A joke on the radio. And I didn't feel guilty about it. One afternoon, months later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single page. I hope you're happy. I hope you think it was worth it. No name. But I didn't need one. I smiled, folded it once, and tossed it into the fireplace. I didn't keep it. I didn't analyze it. I just watched it curl and blacken until it was weightless. Because that was the moment I finally understood. I didn't win by catching her. I won by refusing to keep playing. She wanted a stage. I gave her silence. She wanted power. I gave her absence. And as I watched the smoke rise, I whispered something. Not to her, not even to myself, but to the part of me that waited too long to walk away. You were never hard to leave. I just made it hard on myself. And just like that, I was free.